Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Help with Natalie Cuomo. I am very excited to be here today with Dan Perlman. How are you?
Oh, good. Thank you for having me.
Were you alarmed by my intro?
No. I just, hello. Yes.
How are you doing?
I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm, just here, ready to say words aloud.
Very cool.
Yes.
So you have had this amazing experience of writing and starring in your own show, Flatbush Misdemeanors.
Yes. Yeah, I did do that.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that was cool.
I've watched some of it, and I think like the most fun experience for me as a comedian is like how many comics are in it as well.
Yeah, that's so fun because it's like, well, it just kind of like, so we did it as a web series initially.
Yeah.
And we just had comedians because that's who you know, and who's going to show up for no money when you don't really know what you're doing. You know what I mean? They're just going to be there. And so getting to do that and not being able to pay them anything for the web series, and then getting to have almost all of them that were in the web series then come and be in the actual show in some form or other, like, was the best.
Yeah.
Because we could pay them this time. But still in your head, there's still this feeling of like they're doing you a favor kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Even though it's like on Showtime?
Yeah, no, but you still like appreciate, you're like, oh, thank you. You know what I mean? Because it's still, you still have that feeling in your head of like, you're like doing this like small little thing,
Wow.
But it's the most fun because you also can write to these voices, like Bamford played my mom. And so I could just like write to her voice, and like Yamanika is my therapist who yelled at me. And so you could just write in her like world of screaming at me, and then she can improv and make it so much better.
Yeah.
And Roy Wood was the principal, and so you just know these people. Kareem Green played my stepdad. Like,
yes,
all these people who have such funny, distinct voices. Like, yeah. I mean, it was the best. Yeah.
That's amazing. So, how much of the web series and the show is based on like your life?
I mean, it's kind of like, I guess it was kind of like fictional. So I played a bad public school teacher in Flatbush, so I studied education in school. Like, I always wanted to do comedy, but I thought if I didn't have the courage to do it, or if it didn't, whatever, like I would just probably be a bad teacher. So it was kind of like what I thought maybe my life would be without comedy, is I would just be like, just like a well-meaning but failing teacher with like a Xanax addiction, just to get through the day. You know what I mean? Just like, not white savior, just like demonstrably failing, which I think is kind of needed in comedy, but also to teach. Like, you kind of need that Charlie Brown trying to kick the football energy of like, you're going to miss every time, but this delusion to keep going,
Yeah.
So yeah. And I feel like it's definitely like emotionally very much like sort of my experience of just kind of like the feeling of like sleepwalking through your 20s kind of thing, and just being a little like listless and shit like that. But a lot of the like practical stuff it didn't happen, but
Right.
there's definitely some me in there,
Yeah. You grew up in New York?
I did.
Right?
Yeah.
Where did you go to high school?
I went to Trinity on the west side.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Did you, to the growing up in New York part, where did you, Trinity, well, nothing.
I didn't like it. Yeah.
Did you like growing up in New York?
Yeah. I mean, it's all you really know. You did too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so it's kind of like, I'm sure you have that when people say like, oh, that must have been so weird or whatever. It's like, but you don't really know anything else. So it just feels normal,
Right.
And I guess I do feel lucky that I feel like I had like a friend group from like a wide range of, I felt like my experience wasn't too insular. Like, I had friends like all over the city. And so I feel like I got to see more of it than if I had just had only friends in the same like 20 block radius,
Right. Where did you live? Like, even though you went to Trinity, like what neighborhood did you grow up in?
I lived Upper East.
Okay.
And then, went to school on the west side. And then, I had friends. One of my best friend lived in Washington Heights. And then I had another friend in Jackson Heights, and another one in Bayside, and someone else in Midtown. So it was kind of like scattered around. So
I honestly, like, I felt that too growing up in New York, that my friends were so scattered. But that's something that I struggled with a lot, is not having a sense of community and not feeling like any of my friends lived anywhere near me.
Right.
I guess it's a little different. Upper East Side definitely had people near you, but I feel like I felt like that.
But not anybody that I would like see.
Yeah,
you know what I
you're
mean?
just like,
there's like people there, but I'm not talking about
yeah.
You know? But did your friends, were they all kind of like individual friendships, or did you kind of like, or were they you could all like kind of venture together?
I guess. I mean, like, I guess I'd hang out with people after school and stuff. And then I had like meaningful individual friendships kind of.
Sure.
But
yeah.
I definitely felt like it was really hard to feel a sense of belonging for some reason.
Yeah. But I feel like that's just probably like, I mean, I just wonder how much of that is
just growing up.
Is just growing up. Yeah. Is that you always kind of feel like a little bit like, that you're just like a little bit on the outskirts and just like a little bit like not quite. You're in a group, but you're not really in a group, and you don't realize everybody else is feeling the same way.
Yeah.
So you kind of think that you yourself are like the one that is like feeling like the puzzle piece that doesn't fit. You know what I mean? I feel like that's probably most of us, you know?
Yeah.
Except a couple psychos, you know?
Definitely psychos.
Just a couple like extremely ill people who, you know.
When did you know you wanted to do stand-up?
Oh, I knew from real young. Like I loved comedy. It was really the only other like ambition I had. When I was like a little kid, I wanted to be in the NBA, and then I had a doctor. I went to like pediatrician, and he was like, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I was like, "Oh, I want to be in the NBA." And he like looked at my chart, you know, for the height, and he's like, "You're going to be too short." And I just cried.
No.
And I sobbed and sobbed and sobbed, and then I went home and I like looked up all the players that were like short NBA players, and I was like, oh, I could be like Muggsy Bogues or whatever, you know. But then I just kind of like gave up. But then I comedy was really the only other sort of like goal I had when I was like a little kid, like 11. I like wrote letters to comedians like asking, how do you do stand up and stuff, and I asked them all a different question because I was afraid they all knew each other and would like compare. You know what I mean? Like Robin Williams would ask like Chris Rock or something, did he ask you the same thing? You know what I mean? Like that kind of shit.
Did Dan Perlman send you a piece of mail too?
Yeah. Did this child ask how you got started also?
Did any of them respond?
Bob Newhart responded.
Really?
Yeah. I asked him who his favorite comedians were, and he wrote back some names of people that he liked, and then that was cool because then it also like introduced me to some other people, and so it was sort of like a reference or whatever. And then other people like sent back like an autographed photo. Larry David sent back like an autographed photo,
really?
Stuff like that. Yeah, so
Larry, huh?
I always kind of wanted to, but it was kind of years of like working up the courage. You know, I would just like write jokes and not show them to anybody, and like hide them under my bed and stuff. You know, I didn't know if I would actually have the courage to do it. And also didn't really tell anybody that I wanted to, like as a kid.
Yeah.
You know? Did you know you wanted to, or was it like a later sort of like?
I always like wanted to be an actor.
Right.
That was like all I wanted.
Right.
And then I loved a live performance. Like I was a theater kid.
Right.
And then I kind of turned to stand up after that, and like realized I want to like write my own stuff, I guess.
Interesting. Yeah, I was not that at all. Like I was not like a theater person and didn't like performing. But I just like wanted to do stand up. But I think that was like maybe one of the reasons why I didn't like tell anybody that I wanted to do comedy, because you know, like I said, like I want to be in the NBA, and this guy was like, you can't. You know what I mean? So it was kind of like this idea of like protecting your dream a little bit, because it's like, I don't know, I guess I felt, and still maybe feel, that when you tell somebody like you want to do something, it just kind of like gives them a chance to tell you can't do it. And it's much easier to say like, I am doing this thing, because then you're just doing it. Yeah. You know? So I think that was kind of like, it just took me a while to like get to that place. So
what was the moment you're like, fuck it, fuck all these people, I'm doing stand up?
I think it was, well, when I went to college in Chicago, and there was something about being away from anybody you knew that was nice. I didn't want anybody I knew. Like I wasn't, you know, people like who do comedy as a hobby or whatever, they like invite all their friends to their first show.
So
and I was
crazy.
Like, never.
Like do not come.
I was like, I don't want anybody I know there. I just wanted to be bad alone, like privately. So that was nice, because you feel free to kind of like some form of reinventing yourself, you know. So that was when I was, you know, in college.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So I feel like you did this amazing thing of like you and Kevin writing this web series and then actually getting it made and starring in it. That's most comedians like dream. Like what was your what is like the process of your emotional experience when this happens?
Wait, that's a good question. The process of the emotional
Like,
experience?
yeah, what's like
What do
your
you mean?
emotional experience when something like this happens? Like, you guys are writing, you're working on this web series, and like, I know we all kind of have that executive that's like, I'm writing a show about you. Like, everyone has that, and then it doesn't happen. And,
Sure.
And everyone's
Sure.
like pitched all of these things, and it doesn't happen. And like,
Right.
what is the emotional experience of like when it actually does happen? You actually get to build this thing with like a person you're really close with.
Well, I think one thing that helped is that I'd had an experience before that like came close. So like I'd sold a pilot before Flatbush. It was this animated pilot that I made, and I didn't animate it, but like a friend of a friend made this little sizzle, and it was about like a city bus driver and his family, and so I sold that to Fox, and I was like 25 or 26 or something, and I had no idea about any of it. I didn't know what I was doing. I'd never written a pilot before, but I got to go through all those steps and hurdles and cast it and work with the animators and everything and write the thing. And then it didn't go to series. But like going through that whole experience taught me so much of how to like navigate the process.
What would you say like you learned in that, the biggest thing you learned in that experience?
One of them was to kind of like trust my instincts, because there were some things that maybe I felt like I had a feeling like, oh, I think this would be better, but I didn't really have the courage to like express, because there was a little bit of me that felt like, this is crazy that I'm in the room. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I shouldn't say anything because whatever, And I think, and you just kind of learned, because it is a collaborative thing and you're working with these different stakeholders and stuff, of how to interact with them like as collaborators and not as maybe people that you have to listen to everything they say, or people that you have to reject everything they say. But like, we're all kind of making this thing together. Our goal is to make it the best thing it can be. So we're all collaborators there, and you just kind of learn how to kind of like navigate that a little better. And to just figure out like, okay, what are the gaps? What do we need to like get it over the line a little bit, So anyway, I just think like without having that experience, I wouldn't have been able to do that with Flatbush. I don't know. With Flatbush, it was also just such a long road, because it was like a web series that nobody watched and nobody cared. Like, we threw it online, and then it like found life in film festivals. It started to win like awards and stuff at these film festivals, and that gave it that kind of external validation that it was good, because it's very hard to find that,
Yeah.
Like, nobody wants to be the first person to say something is good. They want to be like the 20th person, So it's just like, so whether you post it and it goes viral, or a bunch of people are sharing it or whatever, or, these external things are giving it award, like, it's something that is saying people like this and recognize some quality in it. But then, it was like a lot of development of it, and working with pitching it to networks, and we were lucky to have a few offers. And then, but it was a crazy time when it got picked up, because it was COVID. And so nothing was, we weren't like leaving our homes, and so it was a weird experience to go from like not interacting with anybody and not knowing like, is anything going to be a thing anymore? This is like summer, fall 2020, where you're just like, people are just doing shows under bridges and stuff, and we're just kind of like trying to like get outside in any way. And then to go from that to like, so it was definitely like a stressful time, like waiting for the decision, But then once it happens, then it's kind of like, it's just exciting, because then you're just like, I don't know, I'm very like practical of like, just like, what is the next thing I have to do? Like next hurdle. And so I kind of like when there's those things to focus on. So that's kind of how I will sort of operate it. Sorry, there was a bunch of words.
No.
Answer some of them. Yeah.
I like that. What did you like feel like the biggest thing you learned in that process was?
I mean, you learn so much. I don't even know. Like, I mean, you learn things at every stage of it. But I mean, the biggest thing is you're like learning how to work with other people, and how to collaborate, and how to like bring, One of the coolest things for me to learn was how every department adds such life to the thing. Whether it's like production designers or props or like all these departments, music, everything like adds so much sort of like attention to detail and comedy to it in a way that like makes that then ultimately makes your writing better because you're more aware of just like all these little facets of it that can like bring it out more. And also that it's okay to like not know certain things. I think that was one thing I was like nervous about up front, like before I directed, because I got to direct in the second season, which was real cool. Like there's a part of me that was like self-conscious of like I didn't go to film school, and so I don't know lenses and I don't know like stuff like that. And there was a part of me that was just like maybe like insecure of just like, well, I don't know this stuff, and so I'm not qualified to do X, Y, or Z. But then you realize like that it's okay, and as long as you can kind of articulate the like emotion you want and the sort of feel and everything, like you have all these people who are really good at what they do, and they can translate it into like the jargon that they speak. You know what I mean? And kind of trusting them while still expressing what you sort of like. It's all a collaboration, and it's all a dialogue, and it's all stuff like that. It was cool and like freeing to learn, you know?
How is it going from something like stand-up that's so singular and self-focused to this like collaborative giant team?
For me, I learned I like it a lot more.
Yeah.
I like working with all these people, and I like finding these other perspectives and kind of like building like the world building is like very fun for me. And
it's my favorite type of video game.
World building. Yeah. I mean, it's so fun. It's like so cool. You just sort of like build this out and like making these little discoveries from the writing process to like on set to like in the edit. Like there's just so many little aspects of it where you can just like add these little nuances, and finding these people who, in front of and behind the camera, like, I mean, the comics too, like, it's like there's downsides to working with comics. They're not going to know their lines. They're not going to have like looked at the script.
Really?
They're not going to know what they're doing or why they're there, but they all know who they are. You know what I mean? So like if you make them comfortable, they're going to make every scene better.
Right.
And that's what they all did. And so that was so fun to be there and experience that, and kind of, I don't know. It was so, I loved it because I loved, you just want to like make a cool thing. And if everybody also like enjoys the experience and try to make it a good experience for everybody, like that was sort of like how I saw my role in it, you know?
Directing and writing is so much about like, and so is stand-up really, like the way that you see the world. It's like, how is the world like through your eyes? Like what do you think is kind of like what is like your lens that you see the world, that you feel like is a consistent, that you're kind of showing through your stand-up and through these pieces of work? Do you think there's like kind of this like a line of consistency through all of it that you feel in you?
I'm sure there is. I feel like people watching it would probably be able to like take it in better than I could. You know what I mean? Because it's not like a conscious thing.
Right.
But there certainly is some consistency to it, especially with like how Flatbush was weird because I'm in it also. And so I'm writing my own character, and I see afterwards like how I'm having him operate versus like, and what is fun for me to have him operate that way, which is like, there's a lot of uncertainty in a world that is like seems more certain, and characters that are more certain.
Yeah.
And so some of the comedy to me came from their certainty, even if it's wrong, you know. Kareem Green is my stepdad giving advice that is just wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And one of them, I don't know how to like what gift to get for this love interest who I have a crush on, and I'm debating whatever, and I wrote this long thing for Kareem, who did great, by the way. Kareem Green, do you know Kareem?
Yeah, of course.
He's so funny, and he did so well. He had never acted before.
He did great, really.
And I would give him these long things to say, like long speeches, just because he was so funny. And he would come in and really just like inject such energy and personality and force that he has in his pinky that I don't have if I was trying to, if I was 10 espressos in, like I just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And But anyway, in one of the first episodes, he gave this long thing that we wrote about, like, you know, he's like, it's not about a gift, like, show her you care, like, action, like,
Yeah.
and he gives some story about when he met Bamford and this guy was like harassing her and he picked up a dead pigeon and threw it in that guy's face, and that's when she knew that he cared, you know.
Yeah.
Like, that's love, a dead pigeon to the face, you know what I mean? Like, craziness. But anyway, I don't know, that was fun to just, you notice that stuff subconsciously, but I'm not great at, like, I'm maybe not great at, like, deciding, like, this is the lens and then working from there. It's more just like with jokes, like, you kind of just write the stuff you find funny, and then you notice there's a pattern here, you know.
Totally. Yeah. I was watching your Comedy Central set, and I really like the joke that you have. I think so many people write jokes about, like, how men are like, oh, I want a girl with no makeup.
Oh yeah,
and
sure.
Your joke is my favorite one I've ever heard about.
Oh, that's
that.
so nice. Thank
when
you.
You're, I honestly always butcher people's jokes on my podcast, but when you're like, oh, so you want someone with a perfect face,
right?
It was such a brilliant take on what people say.
Right, it's a fake. Thank you. It's like a fake acting like you're being humble, but it's like an extremely lofty standard to just say that you want one of God's home runs, which is a fun phrase to say.
Yeah, I feel like your stand-up is very observant. Like, it's personal, but very, like, it's like, you know, it's very observant as well.
Yeah, that's probably fair.
Yeah.
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 I don't know. I don't know. It's just kind of like what you notice or what seems funny to you.
Yeah.
And maybe there's some, like, a little bit of, like, removal there, but it also is, like, if you try to give a sense of, like, how you feel about shit.
Definitely.
Know? But we don't always, like, know the answer to that. And that's how I feel about writing in general too. Is like, I don't really, like, know the answer, you know, but you're kind of trying to, like, figure it out. You know?
No, I really liked your set. It was really fun to watch. Oh,
thanks.
Yeah. And it was fun to watch, like, back to back with some, like, of the Flatbush Misdemeanor.
I realized I'm wearing the same sweater that I'm wearing in that one. But I promise I own more than one.
Honestly, I
own maybe
like
three.
The Steve Jobs thing. So
I save so much brain power by doing this.
Exactly.
Yeah. I'm a real Elizabeth Holmes over here. Yeah.
What is next for you? Like, do you have, like, I mean, in my mind, I'm like, you've accomplished, like, that. You've accomplished, like, a great thing.
That's sweet. It's nice for me to hear other people say that, because then in your head you never think, you know, anything. But I love the writing and directing, and so that's where most of my energy has been, to just kind of, like, write the next, like, half-hour stuff and feature stuff, and I'm sort of getting that stuff together because I like writing and directing, and the acting is fun. It's fun, but I also, if I of the three, if you told me I couldn't act in a thing again, I would be fine.
Really?
Yeah, 100%. Totally.
Wow. So what's your favorite of the three? Like, writing, acting, directing. You'd pick writing.
Yeah, and I love directing too, but those two.
Wow.
Well, because I guess I feel like, and I've found in, like, the things that I've made where I haven't been in it, or even the scenes when I haven't been in it, like, it's still so your voice, you know?
Yeah.
And it's still, like, we're talking about, like, world building, like, it's still, like, you're all over the place in those things. Like, it doesn't need to be you talking. And so that's kind of how I feel in, like, writing shit, that, like, it doesn't need to be, like, when you're thinking of a world, like, well, it starts with me and walking around doing something, and what am I walking around doing? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I've sort of found that in stuff where I'm like, man, I just feel my voice, or, like, what is funny or interesting to me, or the themes that inadvertently come up, like, all over the place, whether or not I am in the thing.
So, like, when you're sitting down to write and you're just, like, staring at whether it's, like, a blank page or a blank Google document, and, like, you haven't written anything about a show yet or anything, it's just, like, a brand new idea. Like, how does that begin for you?
It kind of varies. I mean, because sometimes it'll be, like, a moment, you know, like I made this short film that I've turned into a feature, but, like, it was these two kids that I'd worked with before, because I tutored for a while, and it was these two kids who or they're accused of like cheating off each other on a test, and then their friendship gets like threatened as a result of it. And that came from just like this little like moment where I was like tutoring this kid, and this 8th grader named Alex, and I asked him, this is years ago, and I asked him how the test went that we were studying for, and he was like, well, when I was walking into the test, the previous class was walking out, and one kid said it was really hard, but another kid said it was really easy. And I was like, oh, that was such a like moment. You remember when like that stuff would happen and like you're like nervous for a thing that doesn't really matter, but you think it does at the time, and like one kid is acting like they didn't study when you know that they did, and another one is acting like they're going to fail when you know they always get A's, and another kid didn't even know there was going to be a test or whatever. You know what I mean? Yeah. Everybody's kind of like performing in their own very middle school way. So I just like wrote that as like a scene, and it was just like sitting on my desktop for like months before I like figured out anything to attach it to. So sometimes it starts with this little like micro moment, in the same way in like stand up where sometimes like a funny thing will happen but you don't really have like the angle for it yet. So it kind of like starts, I don't know, for me I guess it usually will start with that little like micro moment, you know. And then you can kind of like take a step back and like broaden, like, all right, well, what would be interesting to see that within. That's sometimes more helpful for me, because then it's just like, I don't know, it's like if I'm trying to write a thing where it's like I want to write a rom-com or whatever, it's like, okay, I guess there's two people, you know what I mean, like you're just starting from such a like big place that it can feel a little like overwhelming for me.
Do you feel drawn to like write things that are autobiographical? Or are you more like interested in world building based on those kind of observations that you see when you're living your life?
Yeah, I feel like, I guess I often feel like the world building stuff, a lot of it becomes autobiographical in some way, because you end up, you know, it's just
pulling yourself in.
Yeah, and so you end up, whether it's an experience that actually happened to you or just kind of like your feelings on something, or like, oh, this is kind of, I realized, like I was writing some, you know, random thing, and in some like relationship dynamic between this couple, I was like, oh, this is kind of like how I was feeling about this relationship at the time, you know. And it's not a conscious thing of like, I'm gonna write about this relationship, but it just kind of like comes out. So I kind of think for me, it's like you don't really need to like decide like I want to write about this experience, because it's gonna come out, you know. And I think you see that with a lot of your favorite shit about people. There's a cool clip of somebody interviewing Steven Spielberg, and like they asked him about some movie, and they're like, and the interviewer's like, your mother was a computer teacher, your father was a musician, so when the aliens land, how do they communicate? They make music through the computer to speak to each other. And Spielberg was like, I didn't even think of that. He's like, I didn't even realize, you know, he was writing about his mother and father without even like
without
consciously
even realizing it.
Right. And so it's one of those things where it's like, it's kind of there, you know.
What is your writing practice like? Do you sit, you're like, I'm going to write an hour a day? Do you have like a space that you write? Do you have like a ritual around writing?
Yeah, I got to do very organized stuff. So I like 10 to 1:30 or 10:30 to 2 are sort of like the ranges.
Every day?
Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome.
I mean, yeah, some days are more productive, but I just like, I need that window. And so I will, you know, get my espresso and I will like do the things just so I'm sitting down there.
At home or like at a coffee shop? Yeah.
Which I didn't have until COVID, but then you realize is so valuable, of just like, I need like a big desk so I can like sprawl my papers and stuff.
Yeah.
If my cat's too excited, I'll put her in my room, you know, just like some calm. And then, and I also like to, the day before, the night before, I sort of like, I know what I'm going to work on that day. I'm big with to-do lists. I make multiple to-do lists a day, because I just would find when I would like wake up and be like, what should I work on today? The day would just be over, you know? And so when that decision is made for me, then it gets easier to like get going, and then you have more momentum. And then just a lot of it, I don't know, I think of it as like kind of like tricking my brain into like working, you know? So like, I'll never be like, I'm going to work on my feature today. It'll just be like, I'm going to work on like this scene and that scene, you know?
Okay.
And sometimes I'll even separate them into like different documents already. So it's just like, okay, the Natalie and Dan talking or whatever, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, so it's just that scene is, so it doesn't feel like I'm working on
it's like a checkpoint,
100-page thing that feels overwhelming. Like I'm just working on these 2 pages, and that feels, you're able to chip away more in a way that doesn't scare my brain as much, you know?
How do you motivate yourself to write when you're like, I don't know if I'm writing for the abyss. I don't know if anyone's ever going to read this. Like, how do you motivate yourself where you're just like, I don't care. I have this drive. I know this is going to get done. Like, I need to say these things. I enjoy this. This is good for my creativity. Like, what is like the internal dialogue that goes on that inspires you to spend 3 to 4 hours writing a day?
Well, it's fun. It's fun to have written, you know?
Yeah.
It's fun to have figured out a thing. And so that feeling of like, oh, when I have this thing that I'm like proud of, that's cool. And I also think like, I mean, and you know this, and we see this like now the most, like nobody is going to go, maybe a couple psychos, but like for the most part, nobody's getting like just like yanked up and handed stuff. Like you need to make the thing. And so whether that's the audience you build or whether it's, you know, social media or whatever it is, it's like you're doing that work. And so I guess I feel like that's most of it, is you're kind of just like, whether you're working out or whether you're whatever, it's just like a lot of work yourself, and then the reward, you know. You can't really control the external, you know.
Right.
But no good external is going to come if you haven't done
nothing.
If you've done nothing. Right.
Yeah. And I like write, and I get into like into modes of writing a lot every day. It's always with like journaling, and it's always with the intention of like, this is for self-betterment, and this is for like me feeling closer to myself.
That's cool.
But I know that like I would benefit from taking the time to trust that like I could put time and work into like writing something more. Do you know what I mean?
Totally. But and I think the big thing is like, it's okay if it's like bad, you know?
Yeah.
That everything that is good, any stand-up bit that you're happy with probably started bad, you know, and you like figured it out, or at least not as good as it was.
Yeah.
And so, but you chip away at it and you figure it out. And it's the same with the script stuff. It just feels a little more daunting because it's like a different thing than the thing you've been doing every night, you know?
That's what I like about stand-up though, is that like you come up with this idea, I'm like, I got a premise, I like throw it at the audience, and immediately they're like, yes, or they're
There's
like,
something there.
Don't waste your time on that, like let it go. And I feel like with writing, it scares me because like you could just spend so much time like chipping away at something, like your whole fucking life goes by, and then you show it to an agent and they're like, nah.
But you don't need to spend, what you saw was, you saw somebody spend 20 plus years on a thing, which doesn't need to be how it is. You know, my grandma, I could talk about this, I guess, because she doesn't know YouTube, but she published a couple children's books. She's almost 95, and then I don't know, that nobody published them anymore. And then she's started, like, she can barely see, she can barely hear, but she's self-published all of these children's books.
Yeah.
And they're all bad. Like, none of them are good, you know? She just churns them out, and there's just a lot of words, and you know, but she enjoys doing it, you know? And then there's a tangent, but it's kind of fun because she uses her grandkids' likenesses in some of them, and it's fun because you can see how she feels about all of us based on.
How does she feel about you?
She wrote one with my likeness where the kid, he was like climbing a mountain, like really slow, like he scratches and claws his way up the mountain, and he reaches the top way after everybody else, but he's still reached the top all scratched and bruised, and he's very proud that he's reached the top.
Oh my God, Grandma. Hey, at least you reached the top.
I reached the top. Everybody's already back down and just like enjoying lemonade or whatever.
Oh my God, Grandma.
Her favorite one, she's like curing AIDS and stuff in Africa. She's like saving the world. When she's done none of those things in life. But it's just.
You're like, she's a drug addict, Grandma.
He just sees Debbie through these rose-colored glasses.
Damn.
But she just, and it was probably a helpful thing to see in certain instances, or just know she was doing that, because I'll get email updates for her and she'll be like, I published 6 children's books, and I was like, wow, that's wild. Yeah,
it's so funny because I do feel like in the writing world, like self-publishing is pretty looked down upon, and I don't think it should be. Like,
people are self-publishing comedy specials all the time.
We are publishing our own work, dude.
Right.
Like,
the only thing that happens with the self-publishing is when people are older. Like every week I'll get an email from my grandma being like, is this real? And it's never real. It'll be like somebody like forwarding to like, from the offices of Martin Scorsese or whatever. We'd like to make this book a movie or whatever. And I was like, it's not Martin Scorsese at gmail.com. That's not his office. I promise. He's not making.
You might want to make your grandma's film.
He's not making a movie of the little boy who climbs the mountain real slow and the better grandkid who cures AIDS.
Maybe if it was Pixar.
Maybe it was Pixar. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun. It does inspire me to like spend more time writing, just because, even sometimes I'll feel like anxiety, and when I've developed that like almost banter with my own thoughts from writing, I definitely can feel a lot of comfort through like that relationship you create with yourself when you spend enough time alone.
Yeah. I wish I could, the journaling that you said you do, like I wish I could do that. I can't do that.
Really?
Whenever I've tried doing it, because I'll like meditate and do that other like stuff they tell you to do in like cognitive behavioral therapy and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it always ends up sad. Like I always kind of like will free write and it'll like just feel like sad, or it tends to like devolve into a more negative place.
Yeah.
And so that's another thing that the writing, I think the other stuff does, is it kind of controls the creativity and thoughts in a way that is like more fun for me or healthier.
Yeah.
But if I feel like I could like free write on myself or how I'm feeling in like a healthy way, like that'd be cool. But I don't have that muscle,
I feel like the high school I went to, like we had to do that for the first few weeks of school and my college.
Really?
So it feels like this very natural.
What high school did you go to?
Bard.
Okay. Yeah.
And like,
very
so
artsy, yeah.
Yeah, wait, the first week of high school and the first 3 weeks of college were just writing workshops of just like, you start everything by free writing how you're feeling. Just like, I'm feeling this, I'm feeling that, I'm feeling this.
Do you still have that stuff?
I could find it.
That'd be fun.
I know that I've always journaled and looked back at the journals and seen like the same thought patterns and been like,
Yeah. No, I wish I kept more of that stuff, but that would just be fun to like see. So much of it you'd cringe at, but like, or not even remember. There's some of the stuff I found, like you don't even really remember like how strong you felt about this thing, that you can like barely remember feeling, but then you're like, whoa, I was like really like feeling this thing,
I know. Do you feel like there's a consistency that like you would see when you look back at your past stuff
in terms of like how I was feeling about something? I don't know. I think a lot of like stuff that I've had to work on of just like kind of like black and white thinking, of just kind of like everything, like
it's either one way or another,
or just like when things are bad, like I don't see how it'll ever stop being this way, kind of thing, you know, like stuff, very kind of like just depressive kind of like patterns that take time to undo,
Yeah, I get that.
You vibe with that?
Yeah. I feel like a lot of my intrusive thoughts when I was like in high school or college would be like comparing myself to other people and feeling like I'd be like, why can't I stop comparing myself to Cynthia? And then I'd like look 6 months later and be like, why can't I stop comparing myself to Zoe? It's like, what the fuck?
Do you still do that? You feel?
I don't think that it's like to that extreme, but I definitely feel like I will see other people's accomplishments and they'll make me feel like worse about my own
social media
success.
stuff for that.
Definitely.
Yeah. because you just wake up and you're just instantly seeing.
You just wake up and you're like, oh, cool. I'm not on the Tonight Show later.
Somebody else is. Yes. Boy, somebody else is doing a theater tour or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, wow, they sold a lot of tickets. How nice.
Yeah, it's up to avoid. But again, that is, I think that's another reason why I like enjoy, or kind of just like feeling like I'm just like, all right, I'm just like keeping my head like, just like down and just doing my thing.
Yeah.
Because I think in another way, it's also like, beyond just like it's productive, it's also just kind of like helps me from otherwise what do you do? You're just kind of like taking in what other people are doing.
Exactly.
And feeling bad when
I do feel like the most successful people are only focusing on themselves. Like they don't have time to compare themselves to others. They don't have time to just like talk shit about people. They're just focusing on what they're doing, and they're focusing
which I still
on their
make
own
time
art.
for,
Right.
Yeah. You can make time for all of them,
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I don't know. That was I ran track in high school. I wasn't good, but I did run it. But I remember them saying that in sprinting, that like if you like glance and look, if you glance for even a second and check how the person next to you is doing, you've lost. Like it's one of those helpful things that I think applies, where it's just kind of like you just need to look straight ahead, and even that little moment where you're like comparing yourself, that has slowed you down.
I adore that so much. That is such a great, that's so true. I really, I notice like when any comic develops any sort of like success, all you start to hear of is like people saying bad things about them.
Well,
and you're like, but it's like pretty like people are not saying like, people are like deciding new things to not like about this person that they didn't have anything to say about before.
They had no issue with them before.
Yeah,
right.
and it's like
nor is there anything really wrong with them.
Yeah, and it's like, I don't know. I think it's really that is cool that it applies to like other things outside of entertainment.
Yeah,
it's like when you can be like literally like, oh, if you look to your side, you slowed yourself down.
Right, and also it is like, I mean, we're all just kind of like doing our own thing, and there are so many people. I don't know. I was talking about this with somebody the other day who they were trashing somebody, and I was like, "This person's fine. Like it's fine." You know what I mean? It has nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
If this person wasn't successful, none of their fans would be your fans. You know what I mean? Like it's not. They're not like a blockade in that same way of like. You're not both auditioning for the same role and they always get it ahead of you. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like, especially now, there's such a billion different like worlds and sub communities and stuff, and everyone has their own little like, we don't even know who's famous. You know what I mean?
I
know. Like when we were kids, there was more set definite. Right. And people that were famous were kind of famous to like all ages. And now I have no idea who's famous to a teenager. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
this kid opened for me in Asheville. Like he did like 10 minutes, and afterwards he's like, "Yeah, I have 3 million TikTok followers."
Right.
I'm like, "What the fuck?"
Right. No, it's so far beyond like somebody like saying a name and you're like assume they're not famous. Like I don't know who that is, and they might be the most famous person in the world. They might start a riot.
It's so like weird.
They truly might start a riot in Union Square because they're gonna like give away an Xbox or something. You know what I mean?
Yes,
like it's
that was crazy. That made me so mad. Honestly, it really is like the Andy Warhol thing. In the future, everyone will be famous for 15 minutes. It's like,
and it's like,
he was so right.
Right. It's like, yeah, everybody's famous endlessly, and it's all fine in a way that is like freeing. You know what I mean?
Sure.
It's totally freeing because it does not matter.
Yeah.
You know? It's all pretend.
Outside of like writing, directing, acting, comedy, what do you like to do? Like, what brings you joy?
I don't know. I feel pretty boring. I love see movies a lot, and I love like going to the movie theater and seeing a movie. I feel like I have had a lot of like long-term friendships that are important. I try to like check in a lot on people and sort of like have those close dynamics with friends. I'll play basketball once a week, and I feel like those are like a lot of the things. I have my cat. I don't know. It feels pretty like, I guess I feel this more like in my 30s now. As you get older, as it's kind of like I'm like okay, not. I think when you're young, you try to like force yourself into different environments, being like, I'm not somebody who enjoys this, but maybe I should be, you know?
Yeah.
And then I feel as you get older, like, oh no, this is the stuff I like, and that's like okay.
Totally.
You know? How do you feel with that?
I've never liked going out ever.
Sure. Yeah.
So I've definitely accepted that about myself.
Right.
But I definitely feel like I'm looking for things that will just like simply bring me joy.
What have you found?
I like doing Legos.
Fun.
Cool. I
Cool.
like watching a movie that I get into.
Yeah.
I like being with my dog a lot.
Yeah.
But I like nice weather.
Cool. This feels like we're like filling out our dating profiles.
Well, yeah, it's tough. I really am looking for things that I'm like, this brings me joy outside of like
for sure
this one track of like
you know. I truly I've like, and I've also kind of experimented and tried different things. I took singing lessons over COVID.
Really?
After COVID, it was like fun because my friend Erin, she like teaches singing.
That's fun.
And more for like children. But it was during COVID. I was like bored out of my mind, you know. And I was just like,
you're like, let me get my germs all over you.
Yeah, well, no, it was over Zoom. Over Zoom.
Really?
Yeah, it was over Zoom. Yeah, and it felt so much more vulnerable, like singing for one person than it does like doing comedy for way more people.
Yeah.
Because you're bad at it, and without any music behind it, you're more aware of how bad you are. But it was so fun when I did it for a while to do a creative thing that you're not trying to like make any sort of work or career or money off, you know? Like this is just fun nonsense, and it's just like fun to like do this thing.
That's so fun.
Yeah. So like stuff like that, you know, I think it was like fun to like
singing.
Try sometimes.
That's fun.
I learned a pretty good Edelweiss. I could sing a mean Edelweiss.
Edelweiss.
You know that one?
That sounds like a crazy word. Edelweiss.
You know that one?
I do
like
know that
Sound
song
of
though.
Music. Yeah.
That's honestly like it's a high octave for a woman.
Yes. No, I had to learn to stick to my range.
Yeah.
I was told it's not. Just stop trying to.
Yeah. You're not.
You're not Aretha. Yeah, you're not gonna. Right.
I like Sound of Music. What's the best advice you ever received?
There are like a couple that jump out. Do I have to choose one?
No, you could say whatever.
Okay.
How many you want?
Okay.
There could be one that I'm like, oh, thank God you said this.
Right. So if they're bad, we could just just be like next. And I'll just, like,
Okay, fair.
One writing ones we talked a lot about, like writing stuff, is I read this thing and it was kind of like somebody was saying like a lot of people like will pitch me a story of like, oh, it's about a car chase or it's about like a bank heist or whatever, but they were just kind of like tell me the story in terms of a relationship, and it doesn't even need to be a romantic relationship, but like at the core of any kind of story, it's like, you know, friendship, romance, like, you know, father, daughter, mother, whatever, you know, there's something like there that is kind of like the core of it, and just like people connecting.
That's cool.
And then there's somebody said advice that years ago that I thought was just kind of like cliche bullshit and didn't put stock into until later, or like come back to, is they're just kind of saying just like go where the love is, which sounds so like cliche.
I like that advice.
And
Sarah
annoying.
Tolomesh said that.
Really?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because I just feel like, you realize that like so much, where it's just like, oh, a lot of people, I don't know, we spend like a lot of time trying to get the approval of people who we think are good maybe, or we respect, but aren't necessarily going to grant that approval. And whether that's work or friendships or whatever. But then when I don't know, there's a reason, like you feel funniest with your friends, or you feel the most like yourself. It's like, that's the energy you should immerse yourself in, you know?
Yeah.
And that's going to be the best version of you. And I think that takes time to sort of to realize. So those are a couple that stand out.
I like that advice a lot. Definitely something I like to hear today too. So I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I liked when Sarah said that to me, honestly, maybe 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, and I really liked it. She said it kind of in the context of like clubs,
right,
like comedy clubs, but I feel it more in the context of a lot of things.
Yeah, it feels like always Yeah, I don't know. It does feel like when you sort of like get yourself out of those environments where you're feeling that, and sometimes it evolves into that thing where you're just like, I'm not feeling like embraced or like at ease in this kind of setting, you know, relationship, friendship, whatever it is. Like, it's okay to like, you know,
not be there.
Yeah, and you'll feel better. Yeah.
All right, we're gonna pull a tarot card.
Okay.
Is that cool? Have you had your tarot cards read before?
Mm-mm.
Okay. Will you shuffle the deck?
Yeah, I'm not good at shuffling though.
You know, I'm with someone named Dan.
Yes, I do.
And
I've been with your Dan.
I've been with another person named Dan too.
Really?
So I've had the name Dan tattooed twice.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wait, so you had it removed after the first time?
I had it first.
Did you get a different font for this?
Then I got it like covered, and then I like got it again.
Is it in the same place?
It's in a different place. Okay. But every time I meet a Dan, I like say we're on the road and like we're at a restaurant and like the waiter or like there's like, you know, when you're out of town, the owners of restaurants are like really chatty.
Sure.
And you like always their names are Dan. Like I swear to God, like owners of restaurants everywhere are named Dan, and they're always like, Dan.
I think I think this chattiness is I think women get subjected to this more than men. I was just talking to a friend about this. It was like in Ubers. I'm like, no, women get talked to in Ubers way more. I've been talked to in an Uber maybe twice in my life, and every woman I know get talked to in every Uber they've ever taken.
Well, Dans all over the world are owners of restaurants that talk. And I'm literally always just like, I have a tattoo of your name, and I'll like show them, and then they stop talking to me.
You know what's funny is I had somebody who has the same name as me, Dan Perlman, reach out to me, and he's also a Dan restaurant owner.
Really?
Yes.
I told you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. You know, I actually had a really funny Uber driver experience. So I talked about this on my stream actually, but I had like, okay, I was having like a really intense like existential period of anxiety where I was just thinking like about life and like how it's like your only life you're gonna live or whatever.
Yeah.
I was like really freaking out about the whole thing.
Sure. Sure.
And so then
all that unanswerable stuff.
Yeah. So then I like take an Uber from like Jersey to New York, and like I always ask when I do that, I put in the chat like, hey, I'm going to New York. Is that okay? Because usually they're like, no.
Right. They get there and then they cancel.
Yeah.
Right.
And they never talk to me in Ubers. Like never in New York do they, or Jersey. But I get in and the guy, he's just like, yeah. So like, do people not want to drive usually from Jersey to New York? I'm like, no, they don't. And he's like, yeah, I've been waiting for someone to like go to New York today, but you know why? Is because like we make no money going from Jersey to New York. He was going on this whole spiel about how they make no money if it's Jersey to New York. The other way they do. Sure. He shows me how much money he's made the whole day, which was $136. He's been driving 10 hours. I'm like losing my mind, feeling bad for this guy. Like he has literally got me on like I'm feeling like he's telling me exactly how much money he's making like per minute. Yeah. Like he's telling me everything. Then he's telling me about like, you know, he hasn't seen his mother in 2 years. Like he's like his wife can't work because like she's watching the 5-year-old at home. Like
this is too much.
Like he's from Nepal. Like he's lived here for 10 years. I'm feeling like thinking about like this is his. I literally have just such a clear vision in my head. We're like in the tunnel. I'm like, this is his one life, and he is like just driving Uber. Like this is 12 hours a day.
You're feeling awful. Yeah.
This is terrible.
Sure.
So like the trip is $40. I get and anyway, so I'm in the car and he's like, anyway, what do you do? I'm like, oh, I'm a comic. I like write down my name and he's like, you're a comic. Like I have a YouTube channel. I'm like, okay. And like he has this YouTube channel that he's not on at all, and he hasn't posted in like years. But there was 3 videos, and they all have 400,000 views, and they're like music videos to like some foreign singing. Okay. He's like, can you help me? Like, please, can you help me so I don't drive Uber anymore? Like, please, can you help me? I'm like, yeah, I'll help you. I give him my email address.
How are you gonna just like give him a shout out?
I don't know. I was like, yeah, I'll help you. Okay. So like I get out of the Uber. It's $40. I tip $40. I tip the full price.
Sure.
And I give him like my email. He sends me this email. He's like, hey, my wife and I checked out your comedy. It's so funny. That's all he says. Nothing asking for anything. I was like,
oh, that's nice.
That's nice. I was like, I checked out your YouTube. Great stuff.
Great.
Then he's like, can you help me? I can't deal with this driving Uber. Like, please help me. How do I make money on YouTube? I send him the longest email, like literally like the longest email giving him social media advice. I'm like, I can't even tell you. Like, I gave him like the most solid advice. Like, honestly, this email should be worth like so much money.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I'm like, make a Facebook for this, make an Instagram for this. I'm like, you make more money doing this. You should format it this way. I literally broke it down for this man. I literally was like, this size of the video, make it this length. I broke it down for him, the longest email. He never responded.
Yes, I knew that's where it was going to be.
He never responded. I can't even believe this.
I knew that's where it was going. Yes, I've had very similar thing, and it's like, this is the danger. Like, when we make ourselves too accessible, and you walk around with guilt about stuff. So you would have felt horrible if you didn't answer the guy. So it's good you did. And then you
what
showed.
What could I have done otherwise?
No,
like, there's
I know.
nothing I could have done. I can't promote his YouTube channel. No one that follows me is gonna want. It was literally like Nepalese men in like military outfits dancing.
Right, but then you realize like they don't want advice. They're just like, make me famous right now, change my life tomorrow.
I can't do that.
Well, right, but I'm saying once he learned that, he's like, fuck
when
off.
He
like,
gave me a fist bump in the car, he was like, thank you, like, this is what I've been needing.
No, he's imagining like just like a very like 1950s story where he's like, you're a star, you know what I mean, that you were gonna sort of like point and like anoint him, and that somehow like, I don't know, he'd be like playing sold out concerts or whatever. This guy messaged me. He was literally a guy we found, like, he was like on the street.
Yeah.
Like when we were filming a scene in Flatbush where I'm just walking down the street.
Yeah.
To like open an episode. And he was just like smoking a joint on the street with his friends.
Mm-hmm.
And they were clearing him off. And then I was like, wait, actually, can we just have that guy like just hand me the joint?
That's
like,
fun.
Yeah, it was fun. And then, you know, he like found me online and he was like, that was so fun. I was like, oh yeah, we kept it in the show. And so he like shared it or whatever. And then he messaged me this thing. He was like, yo, Dan, can you vote for me? And it was like to be like America's next top sneakerhead or whatever. I don't know, one of those things. And I was like, yeah, sure, man. And then he's like, great. It's once a day for the next 14 days.
No.
You have to like make an account or whatever. And I was like, well, I'm not going to vote once a day for 14 days. But I did make an account and I did vote for the guy. And then like 2 days later, he's like, have you been voting? And I was like, I did vote. I saw you're in the lead. Good job. And then he replies, he's like, okay, thanks, Dave. He called me Dave.
You're like, how fucking dare you, man?
He like didn't even. Doesn't know my name. Doesn't care.
So crazy.
Put him on my show. He like doesn't.
You're like, you're on Showtime.
Make an account. Vote every day for 2 weeks.
It's crazy.
There's an earlier version of me that would have done it. That would have voted 14 times.
It's not
for
right.
him to be the sneakerhead of the week or whatever.
I wonder what the prize was.
I think, I would assume like a pair of socks.
For the sneakers.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. The past. All right. This is Three of Pentacles. I think it's got something to do with friendship. Okay. All right. The Son of Wands. He is kind of like a white knight, kind of like oh God, good Lord. He's kind of like a charmer. I don't know.
This guy?
Yeah.
Is that supposed to be me, or I'm going to meet somebody like that? Or
it could be either. It could be either. And then that's so I'm really struggling right now.
Here.
All right.
So we got the friendship, we got the charmer.
And then the future is the Emperor, which we love. It's like it's pretty it's like masculine, protective, home energy. I love that card because it really embodies kind of like confidence and just like protective energy. All right. Okay, we're gonna go to the Three of Pentacles. Just kind of break this down here.
And can I ask a basic tarot card question?
Yeah, please.
So is it like horoscopes where they vary by the
deck? By the day.
Or I don't know, whatever, because people check their horoscopes like daily and stuff.
Well, okay, you could like pull a card every day and be like, what do I need to hear today? Or you could be like, oh, I'll pull a card for the past, present, and the future. Or you could be like, you know, it's kind of like my feeling on tarot cards is like, oh, it's like kind of a vessel for self-reflection.
Right.
Like you could just take what you want and throw the rest away.
Do you do them like post journaling?
No, I
Okay.
don't. I could.
I'm just curious. I'm just curious how it loops into any sort of like self-reflection, mindfulness-y stuff.
I honestly do them mostly on my podcast, on my stream. And then sometimes like at home, if I'm like really, struggling mentally,
Going through a thing.
I'll
Yeah.
my own. I'll be like, all right, let me address the deck.
Right. Yeah.
All right. I honestly feel like this makes a lot of sense as your past. It's like teamwork, determination, focus. Their task ahead is a momentous one related to your job or career. It suggests you focus all of your efforts. Discipline, strategy, and hard work are needed more than ever. If you become weary or overwhelmed, rely on those around you. It's a card of teamwork. So you may need the strength of others to conquer Grandma's mountain. This makes so much sense. It's your grandma's mountain.
Really tracks. It does track.
You and your team, your collaborative project, you conquered it.
Wow.
I love that. All right.
That's fun.
Okay, the Son of Wands he's really, some people identify with him. Some people, he's a charmer. He's a classic snake. He's handsome. He's adventurous. He says all the right things. Some call him the White Knight of the Tarot. But at some point, you might find he becomes hard to know. Trust your instinct with this one. Perfection is an illusion.
Well, I don't think that's me, but maybe I'll keep my eye
Is
out.
he you? He could be someone you know.
Yeah, maybe.
This is your present, so.
I'll do a mental scan, but
Yeah.
always says the right things. I don't know about that.
Who's there someone in your life that you're thinking this way
That's
of?
that handsome, smooth-talking snake? I don't know. I don't know.
Huh. And then the Emperor. I love the Emperor.
Yeah.
That's the future. It's protection, stability, the father.
Oh, these sound great.
He's so lovely. He's the perfect counterpart to the Empress. He's the side of you that's protective, decisive, and truly stable. He brings clarity of mind, and this in turn leads to actions or decisions. Sometimes this card is literal and points to a fraternal relationship. At other times, it suggests reconnecting with the part of you that stands strong and tall and knows just what to do. With help from the sun, the Emperor can see for miles and miles.
Wow, I like the sound of that.
I love that card.
What a good fucking future that'd be, huh?
Decisive, I really struggle with indecisiveness at times, and
Yeah, I do too.
I like that.
Yeah.
All right, so let's see the story we have here.
What do you do to help with decisions then? Do you have a thing?
I don't. I guess in my head, I've just been working on like my confidence and hoping that will help with decision making, because I feel that the two are kind of connected.
For sure.
But I should be doing more to work on my decisiveness.
I think that's one reason, like, there's a few people I keep very close in, like, those close friendships and stuff, because I feel like I often do need, like, those close people that I trust to kind of, like, validate what I am thinking.
Yeah.
That I'm not like off base, you know what I mean, for a decision I'm about to make. You know, you kind of like need. Sometimes it's not even that I'm like completely at a loss. You just need somebody to kind of like co-sign what you're thinking. You know.
Totally.
You ever feel that? Yeah.
Yes, you just want that validation.
Yeah, where you're just like, please say the thing that I kind of think in my head, but aren't fully confident enough to just go ahead and like submit, you know?
Yeah, it is kind of what you said before about like what you learned from doing that first pilot is to trust your instinct. And that's kind of like decisiveness is
for sure.
And success is trusting your gut.
Yeah, and like realizing you have a voice and using it for the stuff that like matters also, you know?
Yeah.
Because I think some people go too far the other way and they're just like, it just all needs to be their opinion and their take, and it's then that on that side is like an inability to collaborate,
right?
Because it's just like excessive control and this fear of like letting anybody else in, which is also not great.
That's true. The balance
and the opposite of what you need in that thing. So yeah, it's all tricky.
What's the Son of Wands then?
I don't know. The idea that that's the present, I don't know. I feel like a lot of that stuff is stuff I've maybe. Say it again. It's
kind of like a perfect looking seeming person or idea, but that's like kind of how it seems on the surface.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure. There's really nothing I'm seeing as that in my life. I feel like I see the gaping flaws and everything that is close to me.
Well, that's good.
Warts and all. I don't know. I'll keep an eye out. And anything that's perfect, I'm gonna fucking run from that shit.
Yeah. I like I feel like tattoos were the first thing that I felt really decisive about, weirdly enough. I felt like when I started getting tattoos, it was the first time I was like, I'm not asking if anyone thinks this is cool or thinks it looks okay.
Right.
And which is weird because it's the most permanent thing you could do.
How old were you?
When I got like my first like real ones, I was 18. But I was like, it's like, you just go and you're like, yeah, I want this. And then you just get it. And like, you're not sending a photo of it to anyone. You're not like asking anyone's approval. The tattoo artist doesn't give a fuck about what you look like. So it's kind of like this.
Did it feel super like empowering?
Yeah, it's kind of just like, I made this decision. I'm doing this. This is me making a decision for myself. And I think that was cool.
That's fun.
Yeah. All right. I'm going over. So Dan, where can people find you?
Oh, I'm on all the things at Dan J Perlman on Instagram, and and that has a link to all my other stuff. I have Comedy Central set. I have an hour on YouTube. Just look up my name and you'll find all the stuff. Flatbush is off the streamers, but just DM me. And I'll let you watch all of them.
I can't believe it's off the streamers. I mean,
they pulled it before the strike stuff.
I can't even believe this. I'm like trying to watch it on everything, and I'm like, how do I prepare?
I have all the episodes. DM me. I'll send you a link.
Dan,
people think I'm kidding, but I truly will do that.
I would love a link. I don't
care.
I'll send it to you. I am such a good preparer for guests. Like you don't even know.
You should have messaged me. I would have given it to you.
I didn't want you to know. Like I literally am. I prepare. I like watch everything that people do before they come on my podcast.
No.
And so I was just like watching so many fucking clips, but I couldn't watch the.
I'll send it to you, and then you can watch, and then you can like.
Then I'm gonna be so mad.
But we can do a post. You can do a post thing where you just like
ask you a million more questions. I literally am like going on. I'm like HBO, no. Showtime, no. Amazon, no. Hulu. What the fuck?
This guy in the audience the other night at this show, like, when before the show started, he walks in and he sees me, and he was like, "Dan Perlman." He's like, "I loved your show." He's like, "I watched every episode on HBO," and I was like, "It was on Showtime," and he was like, "I watched it illegally." And he's like, "When's the next season?" I was like, "There's no more seasons." And he's like, "What? Why the fuck not?" I was like, "You didn't even watch it legally." What do you think other people did?
Oh my God!
I'll send you a thing. Flatbush Misdemeanors, and then I have other stuff coming. So just follow, and you'll learn.
Send me the thing.
I'll send you the thing.
I will interview you again after I get to watch it. Instead, I just watched your stand-up, which was just as lovely, and clips of the show. But I would love to watch a show and then talk to you about it as well.
Sounds good.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, and we'll see you next week. Bye.